Welcome to our session. In this session, we're going to be changing resolutions for the next 45 minutes and trying to get it right. Are we good? We're good. Right, we understand that like 3 o'clock trying to sit down and watch people present is probably tough work, so we got some sugar. Catch, because it's going to rain sweets. Reach at the back. There's some good ones in there. There's some sour fish. Does anybody know what sour fish is? How are we all doing with... Got that side? Nearly eight.
Should he take an eye out?
Sorry to the gentleman who just threw a sweet in his face as he walked into the room. There you go, that'll get us all going. So, yeah, anyway, thank you for coming along to our session. There's two of us here. We both work for a company called PatchMyPC, and it's a third-party patching solution. My name is Ben Whitmore. I'm a Microsoft MVP in the enterprise mobility space. So I've got a lot of background in Configuration Manager and Microsoft Endpoint Manager. I've been with the company for 3 months, which is pretty cool. And this is my colleague.
My name's Scott. I don't know if my microphone's working. I've worked for PatchMyPC for about a year now. And yeah, we're going to take you through just some overview of what we do.
Yeah, awesome.
Do you want to...
Yeah, let's start off. So our product is going to particularly address third-party patching. So our customers typically ConfigMgr or Intune, and they're used to patching Microsoft software, so Windows updates using WSUS or Windows Update for Business from Intune. So we come in specifically to address that third-party area. Today, our catalog is about 715 applications. And this catalog is built upon customer requests. So as we're all aware, there's like thousands of applications in the world, isn't there? And we don't know which ones you want. So we have an ideas page. So our customers come to ideas.patchmypc.com and they say, hey, look, Ben, look, Scott, we really want this application to be added to your solution. And the idea is you come onto the page, you add in the application, and then people vote on it. And then we make a decision on whether we can add that application to our catalog. But the crux of what we do is we take away that pain point, that time that you would have to spend on the business wants an application, you have to go and find the install commands, the silent install commands, the uninstall commands. How do you detect if the application is installed successfully? How do we stop the application from auto-updating so you can manage that life cycle within the business? So we do all that testing and validation, add the product to our catalog, and then when you're using our tool, you're downloading directly from the vendor's website, and we've done all the hard work for you. And in the demo today, within the next 45 minutes, we're going to give you an overview of how we do that.
So the tool itself is our publisher. Currently, you install it on, well, for ConfigMgr and WSUS, you can install it on your top-level software update point, and then from there you can integrate with Intune as well if you want to. If you're just doing Intune standalone, you can just install it pretty much anywhere that runs at least Windows 10.
Just quickly on that point, how many people are using ConfigMgr? And how many just using Intune? And how many using both? That's interesting, so it's like a 50-50 split, roughly.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Scott.
No, it's okay. So the publisher itself is fairly straightforward, fairly self-explanatory for the most part. There are some prerequisites which we've pre-configured today just to save some time, but we have everything fully documented. Most important thing here, if you're doing third-party updates using WSUS and ConfigMgr, you need to sign your updates, and we give you the option here to import a certificate. Whether you generate that yourself, use a self-signed certificate, or buy a certificate, all are totally acceptable options. Deciding what apps and updates you want to publish into ConfigMgr, WSUS, and Intune is just ticking the boxes, basically. To get started, we do have a scan wizard. And this scan wizard will scan your ConfigMgr environment or your Intune tenant and look for applications that we can support, either publishing updates for or publishing as new applications. So if I just click query here, it's going to look at my ConfigMgr environment, and we're going to see 269 products found. Now from here, it'll tell me the count of applications, which is just the number of devices that that application exists on, the vendor, and the name of the product. And then from here, I can just select whatever I want to publish. And then because I'm in the Updates tab just now, when I click OK, it'll enable those as an update to be published into WSUS, and you can then deploy those through ConfigMgr if you wanted to. You could, if you wanted, pick everything, and then we'll publish those updates for all the apps in your environment, or just be specific and pick the ones that you want. Now, for now, I've selected a couple of products already. But before we look at those, there are some customizations that we can set at the top level that apply to everything that supports those options. So we have the option here to delete the desktop shortcuts that are created by anything that creates a desktop shortcut. And that just means on the client side, when that update or application installs, we'll remove that desktop shortcut. Disable the self-updater. So again, if an app has a built-in self-updater that we can disable on the client side, when the update or the app installs, we'll just do that on the client side for you. And then manage installation logging. So by default, we write a log file out specific to Patch My PC. But what this option does is it tells the installation to write out log files specific to each update and application to the client side as well, so that you have more logging for each individual product, and that's really handy for troubleshooting on the client side. So for ConfigMgr, there is write out to this path, which already exists with the exception of the Patch My PC folder, but we create that for you. And then you've got verbose logging and the option to prefix with the name of the computer that that install runs on. And then if you really wanted to, if the install failed, you could tell it to push that log file to a secondary path just to make it a bit more easily accessible. So with those options set at the top level, they'll apply to anything that supports them. Anything that doesn't support them, they'll just be grayed out. Two apps we'll look at just as examples. Google Chrome. It supports those three options, so they're all highlighted. Some additional options we have here, adding custom pre and post scripts to the installation. So here you can select some pre-scripts and a pre-script and some arguments, a post-script and some arguments. You could put executables in there as well if you wanted to, and then some additional files and folders. And anything you put here, we'll package up with that update or application, and then when the client side pulls that down, they'll all be there and they'll all be called accordingly on the client side for you. Just as an example, we have a script here that just updates Chrome's homepage to be patchmypc.com whenever that update installs on the client side. And if we've got time, hopefully we'll get to show you that. Additionally, you can modify the command line of the installation. So we already set some default commands like silent install and no reboot. So you don't have to do those yourself, but this option would let you pass things like a license key or a different language if you wanted to do so on the client side. And then lastly here, MST transformation files. So again, you can import that here, and we'll package it up with the update of the application, and then that will be available and used on the client side as well. We'll look at Notepad++ just as one other example, because there's another feature that I want to talk about, which I know Ben really likes, and that's manage conflicting processes.
This is good.
So the default option for everything is just to install silently in the background on the client side. For most things, that's fine. There is, however, some applications that need to be closed before they can be updated, just so that the update process happens successfully. So to make sure that happens, we can set manage conflicting processes. You have the option here to just automatically close the conflicting process if it's running, and then let the update proceed. You can skip that update entirely if that process is in use, or you can notify the user to close that application. And with that, you get some additional options like a timeout, and this is just how long the user has to either close the app or snooze the update. We've got prevent the user from opening the app while it's being updated, just so that means if when the app closes, they can't go and reopen the app until the update's finished. It'll just prompt them to say this app's being updated, please try again in a couple minutes. Notification policy. Oh, should have muted Teams. Notification policy, so if Focus Assist is running, it will suppress that notification. So here we can choose to override that and just show the notification anyway. So we'll say that.
That's so cool. Who wants to deploy patches while somebody's doing a PowerPoint presentation and get the flack? So that's really cool.
And then deferral policy. So do you want to allow your users to defer the installation of the update or not? And if you don't, the only option they would have is to close the app and let the update proceed. But if you do, how many times? I'm just going to say 3 times as an example here. And then lastly, if that timeout expires, what do we do? Do we defer on the user's behalf, or do we close the app? So These settings are specific to Notepad++, and you can configure these for individual applications as well. We do maintain a list of apps that we recommend you use these on, and we have all that on our website. Lastly here, the ability to customize the notification. So we've dragged in the App Manage logo, we've put in the name, and if I just click Preview here, we'll see what that would look like on the client side. So you would see that banner image, the name of the organization, the name of the application, some text explaining what's going on and why it's there, the number of times you can postpone that update, the countdown, and then the option to close all an update or snooze the update. And this is what the user would see. Additionally here, you can change that text. That's just our default text, but if you wanted to, we can do add remove. It'll give you a variety of languages. The default is English, but if we hit OK here, in fact, let me just select a couple of additional languages. We'll do French as an example, and hit OK. And now in here, we can drop down. We've got English default and French. So the default English, we'll just click default and it populates with the text that we saw a second ago. You can customize this if you want, and you can do that for install, uninstall, and update. And then under French, we can do default again. We've got the translation in there for French, and again, you can do that for install, uninstall, and update. We have made a change in preview that will populate all those intents when you click default rather than just each individual one at a time. But when you set these and you hit OK and you save, based on the language on the client side is what determines what language would show if managed conflicting processes popped up. And you can change the default language to be French as an example, and that would be the language that would show if no language could be detected. For now, I'm going to leave this as default English and just save my changes here. And then again, if we get a chance at the end, it'll show you what this looks like on the client side.
Just on that, can we just show one more thing, Scott, on that conflicting processes? Because this is the value add that we add. We're not just deploying updates with the customization. So with the managed process, this specifically, I just want to just point that out.
Yeah. So you can only set that at the individual app level.
So when we're doing testing and validation of all the updates that we add to the catalog, we'll pull out which executable needs to be closed for it to be successfully updated. But if there's an application, like a secondary application that you know must be closed in your environment for that update to be successful, you can just add it in this list here. So when the user chooses to close and update the application, it will close the other process that you add in here as well.
Yeah, you can add as many processes as you want in there.
Yeah, so don't add explorer.exe to there. Nobody wants to close Explorer. But yeah, that was it. Cheers, Scott.
No problem. So one last thing here, just before we move on. We have the CVE import wizard for updates here. And if you have any sort of security appliance that can give you a list of CVE IDs, just as an example, I have one here, which just has a list of apps and CVEs and things like that. The only thing we really need is the ID itself. But if you have a list like this, you can import it here, and I've already got it in the address bar there. And if I hit process, it will take those CVE IDs and look to see what we have in the current catalog, and can we publish any updates that resolve those CVEs. So if I group by product here, I can see that we've got Notepad++, this would be 7-zip, Oracle Java, Google Chrome, and Microsoft Edge. So those are all the CVEs that were in that list, and I can see that we have updates available that rectify those. If there's nothing, if we don't have one that would fix it, it'll just show as unknown because we don't know what it is. But then what you can do here is just select all available and then hit import selected patches, and we would just immediately publish those to WSUS. And then you can then deploy them out to your clients. And then that's available just under the updates tab there. ConfigMgr apps is fairly similar. Again, there are some prerequisites that, again, we've already set at the top level here that are needed to be able to publish apps into ConfigMgr. You can set some top-level customizations here, like what folder within the ConfigMgr console to create new applications in. So if I can minimize my taskbar, let me just close this down, and bring up the ConfigMgr console. Under the software library, I can just see I've got my application management, applications, and then I've got a Patch My PC subfolder. And within that, I've got a 7-zip subfolder as well. Within Patch My PC, I can just say applications. It will give me that same folder browser, and I can just select the Patch My PC folder. And now, anytime we create a new application, we'll just put it in that specific folder, and it keeps everything that we've published separate from things you've maybe packaged yourself or from another provider. Last couple of things here. When a new version of an update is available, our default action is just to update the package that's in ConfigMgr already. So if it's already deployed to your users or your devices, we'll just update all the content that's within that package, and it will remain deployed to the same collections. You do have the option here to create a new package for each new application that we publish, and then you could go and deploy that whenever you were ready to do so. And there is retention options here as well if you wanted to keep a specific number of previous packages as well. And then content distribution. By default, we will just tell ConfigMgr to distribute everything to all distribution points. If you didn't want to do that, you could disable this entirely or select a distribution point group. With those options set, everything in here is pretty much the same. There is some additional options because we're into ConfigMgr apps now. So you can set things like your categories, your security scopes, your user experience. We've got the option here to recreate detection scripts, so we'll create all the detection scripts for you automatically. If we've made some changes or there's been an issue or it's maybe not updated successfully, you can hit recreate detection script, and the next time the publisher syncs, it will just recreate those detection scripts for you. Application update and retention, this just overrides the top level options that we saw a second ago if you wanted to change them per application, and then our local content repository, which we'll come back to in just a bit. If you're happy with all the options that you set in the Updates tab and you want to carry everything forward to the Apps tab without doing it all again, I can just click Copy and hit Yes. And it pulls over all those top-level customizations that I set, and then it pulls over all the applications that I enabled. So we'll see Chrome here in a second. And Chrome will have that custom script set that we created in the Updates tab, and then Notepad++, if we look at it, will have the Manage Conflicting Processes option set, because we just carried forward all the options from the previous tab. There are some additional options in the individual app level again here. So if we wanted to move Notepad++, for example, to a different folder again within the ConfigMgr console, I can come in here. I've already got a 7-zip folder, but I just want to create a new folder. We'll do that, and we'll just say Notepad++. Hit OK. It'll create that folder, and I can just select that folder now. And then when we create Notepad++, it'll appear in that subfolder within the ConfigMgr console. I'm going to hand over to Ben to talk about Intune.
Thanks, Scott.
I'll give you the mouse.
Yeah, I'll come back on. I just want to make a quick distinction. So updates specifically, we're publishing to WSUS for those ConfigMgr admins in the house. So we publish it to WSUS, and then ConfigMgr does a sync and pull those updates into ConfigMan, and then you'd use your software update groups or ADRs to then deploy those updates out to your client. So we're not creating those deployments, we're publishing the updates to WSUS and pulling them in. And then with the ConfigMgr apps tab specifically, we're creating the applications in ConfigMan, but again, we're not creating deployments or assigning collections. That's something that you would do as an admin. Mm-hmm. Yeah, just to make that distinction. Cool. So my esteemed colleague was showing you ConfigMgr and WSUS. So we also support Intune in a similar manner, really. So to publish to Intune, we're going to need some permissions on your tenant, first of all. So we need to create an Azure App Registration. We need just a few API permissions, so 6 in total. That just allows us to create the Win32 apps, because that's basically what we're doing, and read your Azure AD groups and some other things there as well. So we need some basic information there at the top level. Have you got Zoom it? Hey, Zoom it. So just to go over some of the things that we're doing at the tenant level. So this is cool. We can update your enrollment status page. Who uses Autopilot for deploying devices? Yeah. So do you have any blocking applications in your ESP profiles? Yeah. So if you choose to have an application that we publish in your ESP profile, we can keep that up to date for you. So Chrome version 105 was released yesterday, and that's in your ESP profile. 106 is released. We'll update that for you, so your devices are getting the latest version of the application when they go through Autopilot. In a similar way, when we create an update for an application, we don't really want Here we go, let's get Zoom it to work. To keep any assignments in Intune for the old version of the application. So when I publish a new version of Chrome, I'm going to copy the assignments I had in Intune for the old version across to the new version, and then remove the assignments from the old version, which means I'm only deploying the latest version of Chrome to my clients. So this is customizable, but they're what we have on for default. And like Scott showed for ConfigMgr, we can keep Intune tidy because every time we create a Win32 app, that's going to build up over time. So we want to maybe say, well, let's just delete any previous application that we created, but maybe keep the last couple, because vendors make mistakes when they write software. So maybe we want to roll back. So let's keep a couple of copies within Intune. So that's kind of what we said at the top level. And it's the same story again, really, that we saw for ConfigMgr. We have a list of apps that we can enable for patching. I can hit this copy button to copy the settings across from the previous tab that Scott configured. So if I hit that, we'll see that Chrome is enabled in this list. If I find it. So there's Chrome. With the same options that Scott had set on the previous tab. So that's pretty cool. But also we can scan Intune devices to see what apps already exist. So I can connect using the same Azure App Registration, using Graph. So these are the applications, the discovered apps specifically that we found on our Intune managed devices. And these are the applications that we support in the catalog. So again, I can just enable these and they'll be enabled in my catalog automatically. But what I can also, I love this feature. So this is really cool. I can automatically enable applications for testing. So who has admins who just, and I've seen this, who has admins who just goes and installs software like a one-off, and it's kind of outside of change control. So you've got one version of Adobe installed over there and another application installed over there, and you don't know what's out there. What we can do is if we see an application on a device, so the device does an inventory check back to Intune, we see that, we can automatically enable that application for updating if it's on maybe 3, 4 devices. So that way you're patching applications that maybe you didn't even know existed in the environment. So that's pretty cool. Okay, so I'm not going to tick anything there for now.
One additional thing that we have added to that scan wizard in the current preview is the ability to see the devices that the application exists on. So if you bring that back up and do the scan again, where it says device count, that's now expandable, and you can click on the number, not in this build, in the preview, and it will give you a list of the device names that those applications exist on, and then you can export them out into a CSV, which I just think is kind of cool.
Yeah, it's pretty cool stuff. And actually, while we're here, we'll show you something else that we can do as well. So using the same API permissions, we can do graph calls to see all the Win32 apps that we have in the tenant. So this has brought back all the apps published by PatchMyPC. But I can say, well, just show me everything we've got. Okay? He doesn't have anything additional, but that's cool. Die-hard PatchMyPC fan over there. So from here, I can actually multi-select applications here. You can't do this in Intune, so this is pretty cool. And I can modify assignments. I can delete apps from here. So this is a pretty cool tool. If you want a real quick snapshot of what's going on in Intune, this is a really neat little tool to use. It'll show you whether there's any installs pending, how many counts there are for installed apps. So that's pretty cool. So shall we delete all these? Yeah. Are you happy?
Yeah.
So let's delete them all. Shall we show them in Intune first to show you that we're actually deleting it? There's no smoke and mirrors here. Let's just find Scott's tenant. So there's all Scott's apps. He's spent hours creating. Well, he hasn't actually. He's probably spent 2 minutes because he used our tool. So we're just going to nuke those. So select all the applications and delete them. It's just the Graph API call. Cool. So Intune has rate limited us. Let's give that a second. Scott, you can't delete them from your tenant, man. Should we try and delete one?
Can we try to not give Scott too many rights?
Yes, let's rein him in a bit.
That's working now.
There you go.
I actually had a tenant deleted recently by Microsoft because I published too many applications. And they complained about it.
Do you want to tell the story? That's a funny story to tell.
No.
How many applications did you create in your Intune tenant, Scott?
Maybe 10,000 applications. And then tried to delete them all, and it didn't like that.
The good news is you could add them, you just weren't allowed to delete them.
Yeah, yeah.
So there we go. They're all gone. Cool. Okay. So that's a really neat little tool. So Intune apps, I'm going to be creating Win32 apps in Intune. So, okay, Ben, what's the difference between Intune apps and Intune updates? Well, not an awful lot, actually. I'm just going to hit the copy because I want to copy across those customizations again and those same apps that I've selected. Specifically, though, Intune updates, we add a requirement script. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? Win32 app requirement scripts? Yeah? So what we say is, I'm going to publish maybe Chrome as an Intune app, and maybe I want to make it available to my users in the company portal to download and install themselves. But if I want to patch Chrome, if I want to do a required deployment, I'm going to create it as an Intune update, and our requirement script will say, well, this is only applicable if Google Chrome is installed and it's a lower version than the update that I'm trying to make required on the device. So that's that distinction there between those two tabs. So let's do some assignments. Let me go back to the Intune Apps tab, maybe at the top level. So this is going to apply to all the apps that I've selected. Maybe for all the apps that I've enabled, I want to create an available intent for all users. It's pretty cool. And then if I go to the Intune Updates tab, maybe I want to do a different assignment. Maybe I want to say, well, these are updates, so I want these to be required. Okay, so I can say, well, I want the updates to be required on all devices. That makes sense. Or maybe I want to roll the updates out in like an ordered fashion. Maybe you've got update rings that you use for Windows Update for Business. So I can select those as your AD groups. We have permissions to see those. And so these are the options that you would have if you're configuring a Win32 app manually in Intune. Maybe I want to say for my first patching ring, let's make it available straight away. And let's give it a deadline of, a day. I don't know. And maybe for ring 2, I want to say, well, let's make it available straight away maybe again, but let's give it a deadline of 3 days and so on. So again, no smoke and mirrors or magic. This is what you can do with Win32 apps in Intune. But it's a pretty cool way of patching in a staged manner. I'm just going to add all devices with a required intent for now. And hit apply and save those changes. Scott, do you want to talk about sync schedules?
So by default, the publisher will run every day at 7 p.m. And at that time, it'll grab the most recent catalogue from our website. It'll look to see what apps and updates you have selected across all the tabs. And if there's a newer version available that you already have in your environment, we'll pull down the content from the vendor's website, so Google Chrome from Google, Firefox from Mozilla, and we'll package that up with all the customizations you've set, all the additional files and all that sort of stuff. Push it into WSUS, ConfigMgr, and Intune, set all your assignments and anything else that needs to be done, and then that's it. You don't have to worry about it. We just do that by default daily at 7 p.m. You can change the schedule to run daily, weekly, monthly. There is an option for hourly as well, and that will just run at minimum every 4 hours. Or you can disable the sync schedule entirely and just run it whenever you want to. And then at the bottom here, let me zoom in on this actually. There is an option at the bottom here specifically for ConfigMgr to trigger your ConfigMgr software update point sync. So once you push those updates into WSUS, they'll appear in ConfigMgr once your software update point sync is run. You'll have that configured in your environment to run at a time that suits you. This option here just tells our publisher to trigger that subsync immediately as soon as you finish publishing updates to WSUS, so that they're pulled into ConfigMgr as soon as possible. And then at the bottom you have the option just to run that on demand by clicking Run Publishing Service Sync. And we'll do that just now. So just hit Run Publishing Service Sync. It'll do everything we just talked about. It'll pull down the content, it'll package it up, it'll customize it, and it'll publish it into all of the platforms there. But we'll wait on that. It'll take a couple minutes. We'll just talk about alerts quickly. So you've got two options here. You've got email reports. The email report comes out at the end of every sync schedule. It'll tell you all the apps and updates that were published, what assignments were set for Intune. We'll link out to the release notes, CVE IDs, the size, classification, and severity of the app and the update as well. And you'll just get that in a nice email report. Webhook notifications at the bottom here, so same content, same information, just pushed out to a webhook, but by default it would be in real time. So every app and every update would push that information to a webhook we specify here, and you can customize that to be just error messages, just success messages, or everything. We have, again, done some work on this that's in the current preview, and you can set specific webhooks for specific groups of applications. If you wanted things like your browser notifications go to one team, and then say your Microsoft apps to go to a different team, you'll be able to do that in the current preview and the next production release. Do you want to talk about the advanced tab? Or do you want to
Yeah, let's do it. Just another quick thing on the sync schedule. When we do the sync, we're putting down our catalog first, and so we're checking vendors daily for updates. Okay, so it's just making that point there as well. And again, with those updates, we're doing the testing and validation. Okay. So the advanced tab. So there may be some applications that you have in your environment that we support. Ooh. Dancing on the screen. There we go. So we have this concept of a local content repository. And what that's for is some applications we just can't get for you. We can't download with our publisher because they maybe sit behind a login or a paywall. Yeah, so things like Oracle Java or TeamViewer, we can't log in for you and download those. So, but what we can do, if you go and download that binary update and put it into our local content repository, when we do a sync schedule, we'll pick up that binary and publish it for you. Yeah, we're going to make sure that the binary you download is the same binary we've tested. So we're doing hash validation at that point. Okay, so when we do our testing, we download the file, we do the testing, we grab the hash value, and then when you put it down, we're making sure those hashes match. And if they do, we publish. If they don't match, we bin it because we didn't test it. We can't prove that it's, it is.
everything's the same, so all the customizations and everything apply. You just have to provide the installer.
Yeah, so as an example, Oracle Java is a good one. So if we search for Oracle Java, so I can enable Oracle Java to be published, but you'd need to download that binary, and that's what the local content repository is for. Pretty cool stuff. And we have a couple of options on there. We can say, well, once we've put the binary into that folder, I don't really need it anymore because you've published it for me, so let's delete it. And another option which some of our customers use is, well, we'll actually check the local content repository before we go off and try and download it. Because some companies maybe don't allow an outgoing connection to GitHub. Okay, and Notepad++ has to come down from GitHub. That's where you download it from. So we can check that repository first before we go to the vendor. It's pretty cool stuff. And there's a few options under the advanced tab as well. So we can change log file locations and things and do some exports of the products we've got selected. Pretty cool stuff. Okay, shall we show the patches actually deploying? Shall we see if they've worked? So, yeah. So we can open our log file. So the patch my PC log file just shows us everything that we're doing. And you can see here, if I zoom in a bit. So at the moment, it's uploading some chunks to Azure. So this is creating our Win32 apps and doing some uploads. So it's now processing Notepad++. Pretty cool.
The log file is fairly verbose, which is really good.
Yeah, so you get to see exactly what's going on. And this is the same, we probably won't get time to show the client side, but the client side, we do just as much granular logging, so you can see exactly what's going on. And so if you have an issue and you do reach out to support, we just ask for those logs because we can tell you exactly what's going on in the environment because of the detail of logging we do.
We can probably show the ConfigMgr side.
Yeah, do you want to show that?
Let's deploy those apps. So if we bring up the ConfigMgr console, we'll be able to see now if I refresh this. So we'll see Google Chrome here. So we created that app for Google Chrome. It's now quite happily in ConfigMgr. We've got our Notepad++ subfolder, and we can see that Notepad++ is in there quite happily as well. If we just take a look at Chrome in here, you go to properties, just to see what this looks like. So we populate all the information that we show in the Software Center. So you don't have to do that, and we'll keep this up to date as well. This is just so your users get the kind of best look and feel in the Software Center as possible. And we do the same for Intune, and it's what we show in the company portal. We do that for everything under apps. So if we look at Notepad++, we'll see the same sort of stuff, but just specific to Notepad++. So there we go. We should be able to see these in the client side. Just let me deploy them. If this will work. So we've got a script here. We'll just do that for me. If we take a look under updates as well, we'll see those updates now exist under all software updates. I've got two Windows updates in here that we can ignore, but I've got Chrome and I've got Notepad++ in here as updates. They're already downloaded and deployed because you've got an ADR configured in here that's relatively straightforward. Properties. Come on, mouse. Properties. Think about it. So software updates, we've just got superseded no and vendor patch my PC. That's a kind of standard ADR rule that we recommend with the updates that come from patch my PC. While we just wait on that finish and upload into Intune, it's almost done. We'll just jump into the client side for ConfigMgr just to see what that looks like. Because the Software Center on the company portal will look much the same with our apps in them. So I should have pre-connected to this rather than waiting on it, but we'll give it a second.
Oh, any questions at this stage? We have got some swag for a good question. So if you've got a good question, you get a swag bag. Anybody got a question?
Definite swag that you would go. That makes a difference.
Yes.
I remember, I think from last year, that you were working on the multi-tenant feature. I was wondering if this is already available or is it something you worked on?
So the question was, last year we were talking about working on a multi-tenant feature, and is that available? So is that specifically coming from an MSP point of view?
Right.
Yeah. So yes, we have an MSP feature in the publisher now. Yeah, so it is available now.
So the under so I can just show you that quickly if you want.
Because before, what we would do is we'd have an instance of the publisher installed per Intune tenant for each customer. And so our customers said, well, can we just do it from one because it's easier? And we heard you, so that's something we've done. So one instance of the publisher, you can manage multiple Intune tenants. Absolutely. Great question. Deserves swag. Cheers.
Multi-tenancy. So similar to what Ben showed with the options here where you put in your Azure app registration and everything, that's specific to this tenant. What I can do now is just add a new tenant and it will give me all the same options again for a different tenant. And you can create really as many of these as you want, and they'll all just appear in this drop down. You can select all the different apps and updates per tenant, customize them all separately, and then when the publisher syncs, it'll just process everything for each individual tenant.
Yeah, awesome.
So just on the client side, this is ConfigMgr. So I can see those two apps there. I've got Chrome, I've got Notepad++, and I've got my updates there as well that are available. Just to show you what that manage conflicting processes option looks like on the client side, I'll just hit install all on the updates. It'll pull those down, and fairly quickly we should see that pop up here just because we have that open in the background. And it'll have that banner image, unless it calls me a liar, and I know why it's called me a liar. Because I tried to plan ahead and didn't fully plan ahead. So I didn't distribute my certificate to my clients. So let's just do that. So under third-party updates, I forgot to enable third-party updates, which is useful, because that's what we do. And we'll just do another site to distribute that certificate. We'll come back to that in a minute.
Just maybe just to expand on the MSP. So we're quite focused on MSPs at the moment and how we can best help them with their customers, in terms of what features can we add, how can we make it easy for you to use and for your customers. And one of the things we're putting a lot of effort into at the moment is our cloud SaaS portal as well. So again, especially our MSP customers were saying, well, I don't really want to have an MSI installed on the box. It doesn't make sense for me. For other customers, it's fine because they've got ConfigMgr, but for Intune. So we're putting a lot of engineering effort into our SaaS product, which should be available for preview pretty soon now. So hopefully by the time you come back next year, that's going to be in blazing lights. But I'm not going to put any time limit on it, but it's something we're putting a lot of effort into as well.
Just going to reboot that. While I wait on that, the email report, it looks like this. It's changed slightly in the next release because we redesigned it because Outlook doesn't support CSS. But you've got your updates here in your applications, so for WSUS and ConfigMgr, the release notes, the size classification, the severity, and the CVE IDs. And then you've got the same information for Intune as well. Most importantly, we will also write out anything that fails to publish here and why it fails to publish, and we'll link out to the relevant KB article as well. And then the Teams notifications, exactly the same information, just in a Teams notification for each individual update in application. And then again, if we have error notifications, you can split these out and tell you what failed, why it failed, when it failed. So this one, for example, as Ben mentioned this earlier, we do hash validation. So this just tells us that the file we downloaded from the vendor is different to the file we've tested internally, so the hashes are different. This usually just means that the vendor's released a new version and we've not finished testing that internally, so we've not updated the hash in the catalogue. And the fix for that would just be the next catalogue release, which would be the same day. And then the next time you sync, that error should go away. Do you want to add anything to that while I'm reconnecting?
No, it's good. It's good. We have stick around to the end because we have got some Sony earbuds to give away. We're going to do a bit of a giveaway at the end.
3 minutes, so hopefully this. Let's see.
Thank you. That means we're late. They're clapping already. Yeah, let's do Swagger now.
Swagger. Okay, so install. I hope that my lamp's done what I want it to do. Come on, don't call me a liar.
It's tense, Scott. Is it going to work? So just to point out something else as well, we're completely agentless, so we're relying on ConfigMgr agent, okay? And with Intune, we're using the AME. There's no agent here at all. So there is some cool stuff we do when we pull down the binary from the vendor, and we're adding our own executables and XMLs into that update. So when we deploy it as a .intune win file for Intune. And that's how we can do things like customization, like custom pop-ups and custom installs and things. Like this. Right, Scott, I had every faith in you. That's good.
Yeah, exactly as you saw in the config. This is what it looks like on the client side. You have the option there to close the app and update, or close all the conflicting processes and let the update proceed, or just snooze the update. And that will retry the specific number of times you configured within the publisher. So we just hit close on an update, it will kill that process in the background, the update will proceed, and then we'll see in the software center that it's installed once it's finished, obviously.
Pretty awesome.
And then the Intune client side is pretty much identical in terms of what the user would see with that conflicting processes and the silent install in the background. Yeah, that's that.
Can you see the apps? Are the apps there in the applications tab?
So in the apps tab.
Cool. Great stuff. Success. Well done.
Okay.
Let's give away some stuff.
So if you have your phone, If you go to swagit.io and put in that number, then we'll give it 60 seconds, maybe 2 minutes. And then somebody will win some nice new Sony earphones.
You got 1 in 3 chance of winning at the moment. No, those odds are gone.
You can't enter, David. Another 10, 15 seconds. I'm gonna get there. Anybody else? Is anybody trying? Like that?
Oh, drum roll. Oh. Well done. Congrats, well done. Cheers. Oh, hang on. Stop. You'll have to arm wrestle. Did you both win? What was going on there?
I don't know.
Oh no, hard luck.
That's my name.
That's hard luck. Does that say? Does yours say winner? Oh, sorry, sir. I'll have to go by. I'm gonna like. That's good. It's like, sorry. Thanks all for coming. Thanks for giving us your time this afternoon. Cheers.